All right. Today we are joined by Matt Gelb, Pennsylvania Sportswriter of the Year. Matt, thank you so much for being here with us today. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Jake. Good to be here.
So we're going to start off, Matt, just by asking you a couple questions. I wanted to really highlight your career. You've gone through a lot. You're currently working for the Athletic. I wanted to ask you kind of your path to getting to your current job at the Athletic. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. Out of college, I graduated Syracuse in 2009, and I had what was basically an internship at the Star Ledger in Newark, New Jersey. I was hoping to make it more than that, but didn't end up more than that. It was 12 weeks and done for budget reasons. And so then I came home. I lived outside. I grew up outside of Philadelphia, outside the suburbs here, and started writing some high school sports for the Philadelphia Inquirer. I had interned for them while I was in college, and so I had some connections there, and was doing a lot of high school soccer, a lot of high school football on a freelance basis for the Inquirer, and then that turned into a what was described as a full-time temporary job, which was a very unusual designation, but it was one way to get in the door. And it just so happened that the Inquirer went into bankruptcy soon after they made me a full-time temporary employee. And what happened was they weren't allowed to hire, and they actually during bankruptcy they had a hiring freeze, and they actually had quite a few lawyers who left, and so they had holes on the staff. And one thing led to another, and I was covering Phillies spring training in March 2010. I was 23 years old, and I had no idea what I was doing. I was totally out of place and not deserving of the opportunity. But I got lucky. It was a right place at the right time kind of thing. And I've been covering the Phillies pretty much ever since. I worked at the Inquirer from August 2009 until January 2018 when I moved to the Athletic. There was a year in there at the Inquirer where I actually didn't cover baseball. I moved to the city desk of the Inquirer. I was general assignment reporter on the city desk, and I was covering things all over the city, crime, courts, features. Wanted to try something different and found that I missed baseball, and so I was back on baseball. And then I've been covering the Phillies now for more than 10 seasons, and it's what I love, and I've been really lucky to have that chance to do that.
It's awesome, Matt. I love hearing your story. And I think, among a lot of other journalists, I think a lot of times you just get that break and you get into the industry. And, sometimes it is a little bit of luck, but that's where we are today. So my next question for you is, what do you think is probably the greatest event you've covered, or greatest piece you have? What would you say is probably being as much experience as you have?
Well, some of the events that stick out in my head, I got to see a perfect game only a few months into my first year covering baseball, which is crazy to think about because there's only been 20 something perfect games in the history of the sport. And I got to watch Roy Halladay throw a perfect game on a Friday night in Miami. Actually, it was a Saturday night, excuse me. A Saturday night in Miami. There was, maybe 7,000 people in the stands. It felt like this sort of intimate thing that not a lot of people got to actually experience in person. And it's something that I look back on now as one of the most incredible nights. I remember, writing on deadline after that game. It was a night game, and everything that was just so vivid in my head. It was an incredible performance, and I was probably didn't realize at the time how lucky I was because I was, May 29th, 2010, and I had been covering baseball, for only a few months, and I might not see another perfect game my entire life. So that was incredible. I mean, I've covered quite a few postseason games, in the early 2010s when the Phillies were competitive, and those are memorable. But I think what sticks out to me is just being able to travel this country and be able to, see different places and see different ballparks and different cities and different people, and that's just kind of part of the job, like getting to travel around. But those experiences I wouldn't have had in a different job, and being able to go see new places and try new things. Like I've really enjoyed that. I got to go to the Dominican Republic to write a few stories a few years ago, and that was an experience that I would not have had in a different job. And just the different places this job has taken me. I mean, it's not just the games. I mean, I think seeing different things has been, really fulfilling for me.
That's amazing. I really think, the ability, like you said, with the perfect game to really point out the specific date, the specific time. I think, that's something every sports fan dreams of is, being at those big games and being able to share that moment with, and just have that memory for a long time. I think that's one of the benefits of working in this industry. So my next question for you, Matt, I was kind of around the lines of your inspiration. So what's a sports writer or a broadcaster or someone in the industry that you looked up to when you were younger?
Well, he's actually one of my teammates now. I mean, I grew up reading Jason Stark. Jason was a longtime baseball writer at the Inquirer, and it just, growing up in the Philadelphia suburbs, we got the Inquirer every morning, and I would hang on those words. And Jason wrote a lot, but he also wrote a Sunday column every week, and it was, he has such a passion for what he does. And I think that's an important lesson, like that I even as you get older and maybe you become more jaded and, you start to see things that you've already seen a million times. You're like, oh, but you have to have passion for this job to, to really do it right. When you're talking and spending time with professional athletes and coaches, I mean, they, you're never, they look at you and, they're never going to be as good as talented as they are athletically. That's obvious. But the one thing that you can try to match is passion for the sport, and general curiosity and being interested in what these people are doing. And I think that can go a long way. And I feel like that Jason Stark is the model for that, in my opinion. His passion for not just baseball, but for what he does, the written word, and interacting with people and developing relationships. That is something that to this day I still marvel at, and I'm blessed because I can text or call Jason when I need help with an idea or when I need some advice on something. And that is incredible to me because I grew up reading him. So just amazing to me. It really is.
That's fantastic. I feel like, Matt, just conversing with you the last few minutes, I feel like you have that same sort of passion into sports and, just hearing your experiences and kind of some of your stories. I think you can see it within you as well. And so I think that's awesome to see. So the next question I had for you, in light of the pandemic, and I'm sure you've heard this question a lot and a lot of people have been asked it, but how have you seen your work change and kind of the work as a sports writer change with COVID?
I mean, it changed in every single way. And now finally we're starting to get closer to where we were before. I mean, I just was able to step on a baseball field, a Major League Baseball field this past week. And it felt monumental to me. It was almost like this incredible moment just stepping on the dirt, even though it's maybe not that big of a deal, but being able to, interact with the players and the coaches again is just huge. I think we took certain things for granted. I mean, I think just basic human interaction. Like I love, the hours before a game, where maybe I would have been walking in the hallway or walking through a clubhouse or sitting in the dugout and just running into somebody or passing through and asking and being able to talk baseball or ask a question. Hey, why'd you do that? Or did you see this? Or what do you think of that? And, that was totally lost in the Zoom world. I think there is some nuance that has been lost too. I mean, when everything is recorded and a player sits in front of a camera, there's just a different tenor to those exchanges with reporters. Obviously, they can't be as candid as they might have been if it's just you standing there with a notebook or a recorder and there's no camera. And those relationships that you've developed, they matter less when it's a virtual interaction. And I think everything I do as a beat writer, everything I'm trying to do at The Athletic, is be different and find different angles and find interesting stories. And having distance between me and my subjects is not the ideal thing for that. I've really felt like I haven't maybe fairly covered the team because like I just can't ask the kind of questions or get the kind of insight that I needed to properly cover the team. And I think an extension of that, then the fans, aren't getting the kind of information that they should be getting about their team. I mean, I view myself as, sort of the voice in the eyes of a general fan, like trying to figure out why something happened or trying to explain to them, who a player is and why, and his story and why something is happening. And I think being able to get that interaction with the players and the coaches goes a long way in that. So I'm glad that it's starting to come back slowly and slowly. I hope it can be restored to what it was before the pandemic, because I think it's just the most critical thing. Access, there's risk, there's good and bad that comes with it. You don't want to get too close, to a team or subjects. You want to be able to make sure you can objectively cover them. But, given access, a good reporter can really make the best of it. And I think, hope it comes back, and I'm glad that it's sort of getting there. It's really great to be able to get that kind of interaction again.
I think you had a lot of points there that I was hoping you would, and I kind of bouncing off of that last question, Matt. What do you see as the future of the sports media industry? Do you see anything continuing on from this COVID, the time that we've had recently? Do you see anything continuing from that, or do you think coming back to normality, we'll be back to where we were before?
Jake, it's hard to say. I do think that a lot of teams have enjoyed a little more control over those interactions. I wouldn't be surprised if there are more restrictions on, when reporters can talk to players or where they can go and what they can do. And, it would be a shame if that was the case. I mean, especially if the pandemic is sort of kind of the convenient excuse to implement some of those changes, because I think the teams benefit in the end from having reporters around. I mean, I think in a way that we are bringing attention to the team and its players, and maybe that's bad attention at times, but it can be good attention too. And I think that's important, as it's a very crowded sports landscape right now. I think teams would be wise to encourage fair and inclusive coverage, of their players and their coaches and their executives. I worry that, a lot of stories might be told more from the management perspective, right? I mean, if there's less access to the players, that might distort how stories are told. If it's more front office people talking and more managers talking instead of players, then, you might not have the kind of perspective that the player might provide. And it might be a distorted view on things because you're getting it from one side. And I think getting both sides is really important. To get that both sides, you need that access to the players. I've seen, this isn't just from a writing perspective, but from a broadcast perspective. I mean, the fact that TV and some radio teams are not traveling yet on the road. I mean, I think the average fan can tell at this point. They can tell when a broadcast team is not on the road. And again, the pandemic is sort of being used as an excuse there, but money is a big reason why too. And so I hope that more and more broadcast teams get back on the road, and there's no substitute for being there. That goes for a writer like me, or for a broadcaster, for anyone. I mean, there really is no replacement for that. And I hope that doesn't become a trend.
I agree. I think, like you said, from a fan's perspective, being able to hear both sides from a managerial point, but also from a player's point, is really important, and something, hopefully we can fully get back here pretty soon as more events open. So kind of my last question for you, Matt, is, as an aspiring sports writer myself one day, what advice do you have for someone like myself?
The best advice that I give, and I'm asked often, is it doesn't sound too prophetic, but read. Read as much as you can. Like, you can't develop your own voice or an understanding of what good writing is and good reporting is unless you're exposed to it. And that requires you reading as much as you can. And, maybe you pick out 2 or 3 or 4 of your favorite writers that you like, or you follow a couple teams and you try to see trends in the coverage and see what makes a good story. You just don't know until you actually read it. And there's so much to consume right now. And some of it is, really loud, and the loudest stuff is probably the most shared and viewed, but it's not necessarily the most substantive reporting and writing there is. And I think being exposed to good reporting and writing is really the first step to me, and that requires reading. I mean, I set aside time every morning still, to read as much as I can. It's not just Philly stuff that I'm reading. I'm trying to read other writers in other markets that I really admire. May not even be baseball. It's just people who I appreciate, and I might pick up an idea from reading one of those stories, or I might just see something that a writing style or somebody using their voice, and I just pulling it all together and wrapping it into, what I'm trying to accomplish. So, read fiction, read nonfiction, read anything, because it just will help you form your own voice, and you'll understand what it takes to do this job, I think.
Oh, that's great advice. I think that's definitely, something that goes unnoticed from sports writers and people aspiring to be like you one day. And I think that's really great that you brought that up. Thank you so much again for being here today. Matt Gelb, Pennsylvania Sportswriter of the Year. Thank you so much again for being here, Matt.
Thank you, Jake.